Hey, welcome to my presentation, and it's called Fish Like an APT with the other name Phenomenal Pretexting for Persuasive Phishing. And this is a presentation about why you should think about what you're going to use as a scenario during your next APT emulation. So, about me, I'll try to do this in Spanish. Please correct me if wrong. But I thank you, Duolingo, for doing this. Mi nombre es Sanne Maasakkers. Yo vivo en los Países Bajos, en La Haya. Uh, y, y yo trabajo el equipo rojo, o red team, el equipo Research and Intelfusion. And I'll continue in English now because it's way easier for me. But I work in the red team and the Research and Intelfusion team. So that means that I combine the offensive way of thinking together with threat intelligence. So I combine them and do the threat intel part and the red team part. Um, and this is what I always like to say is that I once successfully fished the white team or El Equipo Blanco, I guess. There was a phishing assignment once in a red team, and they asked me to send a phishing mail, which was a SharePoint scenario. And the white team did know that there was going to be a phishing assessment, but they still clicked on my link because I made it super realistic. So that's really nice to tell everyone that I'm able to make phishing emails that are really realistic, I guess. And last thing that I would like to mention is that I was the APT during the biggest Dutch cyber crisis exercise this year. We had a big Dutch cyber crisis exercise with vital infrastructure in the Netherlands, and I was asked to be a fictive, well, non-existent APT or not real existent APT, and I had to send out phishing mails, but also create the entire attack. So if someone needs a phishing scenario for the non-existent APT called Raspberria, please let me know. I'll tell you everything about it. So this presentation is about phishing during adversary emulation. And what do we know about phishing and adversary emulation? Well, we know that phishing is a commonly used technique to get initial access. Research shows that around 90% of all attacks start with a phishing email. And there are a couple of ways to obtain initial access. And our friends of the MITRE define three ways within the technique T1566 called phishing. And those three are the spearfishing attachment, the spearfishing link, and spearfishing via a service. The spearfishing attachment is just like what's here on the screen. You send an email, you add an attachment, like a malicious doc, for example, weaponized document, and you send it to the victim. Victim opens the attachment and got affected. The second one is the spearfishing link. That's sending an email to the victim with a link in it. It could be to a credential harvesting page, a login page, or maybe a link that downloads a file. And the last one is spearfishing via a service, and that one is really interesting, I think. That is not using email itself as the way to deliver your malware, for example, but using a service. Could be an online service like Dropbox or OneNote, for example, but also a Telegram or a LinkedIn page or a conversation. And why do we send these emails still during adversary emulations, but also why cyber criminals send it is because it just works every time. Well, it's still shown because it's still sent by cyber criminals, and we still use it during adversary emulations and red teams because we know that if we send an email, someone clicks. And that has different reasons because why someone clicks. So why do we actually click? And I think this is relevant information to know why it's still effective, and what we can do to have it as effective as it is now. So why do we click? There are three reasons. The first one is the recipient did not get security awareness training. So if someone didn't get security awareness training, that person doesn't know if it's a legitimate mail or a phishing email. So the person clicks on it because it thinks it's a legitimate mail. What I also see in this one is that the security training is not really good, so it's almost nothing or is not repeated every year. So still no security awareness. The second one is that the email is more advanced than the awareness training covered. So if you got an email, which is really realistic, and you got in your awareness training that you have to check if the sender address is contains a typo, for example, and the email is sent from a spoofed email address, then the email is more advanced than your awareness training covered. So I think this is the case in a lot of emulations, because what I see is that security awareness training is often really outdated. I still find some organizations that tell people that you have to check if there's a lock next to your URL. So if it is HTTPS or not. So, and if there's not a lock, then it's probably a phishing website. And if there's a lock, it's probably a legit website. Well, I don't know, but that's a really, really bad awareness training, because we see that every phishing site has that lock. It has HTTPS, thanks, let's encrypt, and all that kind of services to make it really easy. So in this case, the email is more advanced than the awareness training covered. So people still click because they think it's legit and it was not covered in their awareness training. And the last one is the recipient was distracted at the moment. And this is, yeah, just like normal human behavior. So when I have, well, I don't have it, but if someone has running kids around the house, we had to work from home. There was a lockdown, you were working, you are in meetings every day, every time, and you have to teach your or homeschool your kids at home, and you still want to finish some work for that day. Well, it could be that you click on a link that you would normally not do because you had decent security awareness training. So that could be an option. If you have annoying colleagues and long Teams meetings, so if you had Teams meetings all day, you got a lot of emails that day, you still need to reply on that, or you have to interact on that email, and you will do that in the last 30 minutes of your workday just before the weekend, and you click on something because you want to get the job done. Well, that's normal behavior, and then in that case you would click on a link. And the last one, that's more my personal case, I guess. If I didn't have my morning coffee yet and I open my laptop and check out which emails I got from the day before and the night, I'm scrolling through it and think, okay, I can delete this, delete this. Oh, I have to log in on this. Okay, fine. So that could also be a possibility why you click or interact on an email, because you're just distracted or tired, or any other case that you will click on a link that is still human behavior. Um, so we got a lot of emails every day, and especially in these days where we have COVID and working from home, I guess everything is an email. Well, it's good that it's good that Teams meetings are converted to emails instead of having Teams meetings all day. But you got a lot of emails. Everybody emails everything because you don't speak each other at the office. So you got a lot of emails all day, and you have to do something with that. Do something with it. So you scroll through your emails and you have to decide in a split second if it's a legit email or if it's not a legit email. So there's a lot of going on in your head when you're scrolling through your emails and decide to interact with them or not. So in that split second, you make the decision, is this email legit or not? And well, if you look further in the psychology, Dr. Kahneman has defined two systems in your brain, system one and system two, for decision making. And there is a big difference between those two systems. The first system, the system one, is able to make decisions 98% of the time, and the other 2% is for system two. And system one is just the automatic and subconscious actions you need to take. So, okay, um, my alarm goes off. I will wake up and go out of bed. It's automatic because you have to do it every day, and it's like a routine. And you're not thinking, okay, this is my alarm. Should I wake up or not? Should I go out of bed? No, because you have to do this every day. It's a routine. And the next one, the system two, is more a controlled and conscious way of thinking and decision making. So you really think about it, and you're thinking about every possible option for this, thinking about you if you want to do it or not. So that's the controlled and conscious way of thinking. Um, and we as people prefer to make it as efficient as possible. So we create routines and shortcuts. So if we do something more than once or every day, just like emails, we make a routine, so we go through it. And we make shortcuts because we learn from experiences. And if we know that Office or Google emails are legit, our head makes a shortcut to it that says, okay, this is legit. And that's that's what's happening in your head every day when opening email. And if we talk about shortcuts, I'm definitely not talking about this shortcut, but it's still really cool. It's my favorite one. Um, but to make that decision making even easier for you, um, cyber criminals use the influence principles to make decision making easier. So if I am a cyber criminal, I know you need to make decisions every day if it's legit or not. So why not use influence principles to make it easier? So for example, use emotion in the email. So you react from emotion to that email. So well, maybe you interact interact with my email, and in that case, I will infect your computer. And there are well, it's defined by Cialdini. There are more principles of influence, but I highlighted 5 of them because they have a use in phishing. And these 5, I will show a couple of examples of them, how they were well used in phishing emails. So this is the first one, and it's called the principle of reciprocation. So that means this principle is that if I do something for you, you would do something for me. And this is displayed in this email. In this email, there's, dear Sanne, your company account is about to expire in 30 days. Please log in to reactivate your account. Click the button below to enter the login page. If you have questions regarding this email, please let us know. Kind regards, IT support. So if I got this email, I think, oh, thank you, IT support, that you let me know that I still have 30 days before my account expires. So I think I I thank the IT support that notified me just before my account expired. So I click on login, and I log in, and in that case, my credentials are harvested by cyber criminals. So because if someone does something for me, I want to do something back, and this is one of the examples for that. The next one is the principle of scarcity. So, well, it's literally that there is an amount of time or an amount of money or something like that, and you have to be on time to get it. So, in this example, there's Sir, Madam, today HM Treasury announced a number of measures designed to support businesses. Chancellor sent out a package of temporary, timely, and targeted measures to support public services people and businesses through this period of disruption caused by COVID-19. You can register your business by clicking the link below. Last day to register your business is June 26th, 2020 by 2 p.m. Thank you very much, sent by the Bank of England. And this is actually an example of an email sent by an APT. So what we see, this email is sent just before the deadline of June 26, 2020. And they said, okay, we have resources for you. And if you are clicking or if you interact or if you register your business just before this deadline, we can give you something. So people think, okay, I really need to interact with this email now because I want this. So you see it that there's time pressure in it, but you can also say, okay, there's only three. Well, the stock of three is left at this moment, so you have to be quick. So they asked people to interact in an amount of time or money or stock or something. So you see that people are more likely to click because they think they have to act immediately. Then the third one, that's the principle of authority. So in this email, you see, hi Sanne, as discussed with you yesterday, you must ensure that all the pending dealer payments shall be completed by end of today. You must do a hourly follow-up with your teams and ensure that this is completed today at any cost. Confirm to me on the figure by end of today. Regards, CEO. Well, we see this a lot of we see this a lot in CEO fraud, so that you get an email from your CEO to the CFO and ask you to transfer some money by the end of the day because the CEO is somewhere in another country and one of the customers need their money, for example, or need to buy something from them. So they ask money from the the CEO asks the CFO to transfer money. In this example, the CEO asked to open a document that is attached to this email, also sent by another real APT, but another threat actor. So because it's sent by the CEO, it's an authority. People are more likely to click or to interact on an email of someone who has authority. If it's the CEO, if it's the national police, if it's a company that everybody knows, like Google or Facebook, if it's an authority, people are more likely to click on a link or interact with the email because it's sent from an authority. So this is the fourth one. And well, this is one of my favorites. This is an example of the principle of liking. So you see here, dear colleague, ho ho ho! It's almost Christmas. This year the elves are working very hard to thank all the employees of Sanne Enterprises. I mean, that's a great name. For their hard and good work. Please find your Christmas greeting below, and then you get a button to the Christmas greeting. Says, we hope you all have a wonderful Christmas. Kind regards, Santa or the holiday committee. Because this is sent from the holiday committee, the committee that arranges great brunches during Christmas, always has really nice gifts and organizes the cool barbecues outside this summer. You like them, and because you have a positive association with the holiday committee, you think, oh, it's so nice that they send me a Christmas greeting. I would definitely check this out. So this is the example of the principle of liking. You could have the same passion, the same interest, or because you already have a positive feeling about this person or about this group, so you're more likely to click. And then the last one, and that this is also an example of an action of one of the APTs covered in this research, and I will definitely highlight this at the end of the presentation. But this is the LinkedIn profile of Rob Wilson. Rob Wilson is a person living in England, and Rob Wilson is sending you a message through LinkedIn DMs to redirect you to a malicious document, for example, or something else. And this person is trying to get your attention, or well, to show you that it's a really valid and legit person by adding your connections on LinkedIn to their LinkedIn. So Rob Wilson, in this case, well, not really Rob Wilson, of course, sends out invites to to a couple of connections of one person, the target of this attack. Those people accept the invitation, because a lot of people accept invitations from recruiters, and they don't know who it is, but they accept the invitation. Then the target or the victim is checking out the LinkedIn page of the cyber criminal, in this case Rob Wilson, and sees that a lot of connections of this person already are connected to this person. So because your friends or your connections already think this is a legit person, you will also think this is a legit person because you have the same connections. So this was used by Lazarus, and it's a way to convince people that it's a legit person. So that's called the principle of social proof. So these are the 5 ways of the 5 principles of influence. And if you send an email, it's just, well, a part of the email. So if you send an email to someone, the use of principles of influence is a part of the email. There are way more parts of the email you can have, and the principle of influence is included in every part of the email. So if you check out, okay, what parts of emails are there next to the principle of influence. So if we go to an email, let's check out what are the options. So if we send an email, there is of course a bait. Well, if we send out a phishing email, of course, there is a bait. You want to get something from someone. So there is a link attached to the email or an attachment, just like I covered in one of the previous slides. You send a link to a phishing website, credential harvesting login page, for example, or a download website, or you might have an attachment added to the email. So you can use the principle of influence to the link. So you register a link that contains names of companies that are commonly used, or you use the attachment like a Word document with several names in it, that it looks legit. So you use the principle of influence on those 2 parts of the email. Next to bait, you have the content. So you have the email, and this is like the email body. So you use principle of influence on the language. Is it good language? Is it the same language used as the victim uses every day? Is it good language? Is it formal language or informal? Is it the way that people interact with each other in a company, for example? You have the design. Is it just plain text, or does it contain exact the same design as Google does, or LinkedIn does, for example? Or does it use a neutral brand design, stuff like that? Or just plain text, something that I see a lot. And does it contain personal information? But sometimes if you want to build trust with the person that is the recipient of the email, if you include some personal information, it should convince someone, or could convince someone, that it's a legitimate email. And yeah, you can use the principle of the principle of influence is used by adding personal information to see that you already have a relationship with someone, because you know information. And next to the content, you also have the context of the email. So that's everything around, around the content of the email, or the email body. So that's the sender. Who is the sender? Is it someone you already know? Is it a completely new company? Is it a private person, a private email address, for example? What is the theme of the email? Is the theme that it's about a local event, or is it about a shared passion, or is it about something that's in the recent news, for example? And the goal of the email is the goal to get some information from someone or to send a bait. So now we know how emails are constructed and how the principles of influence are being used on all parts of an email. So now it's like a classifying model to classifying model to research some emails. So if we have the classifying model, what's the next thing we need to do this research? That's the adversary emails data set, and that's really hard actually to get. Um, well, how do you get an adversary emails data set? First, you need to select adversaries with a phishing procedure. There are a lot of adversaries or APTs, threat actors, that don't use phishing as the way to gain initial foothold. For example, when they use external infrastructure or when they use physical social engineering. In that case, well, that's not interesting for this research. So you only need to select adversaries with a phishing procedure. MITRE ATT&CK framework also have an extensive list with all the APTs and adversaries that use the phishing procedure and some examples of it. So if you do that, well, there are there are of course a lot of possible groups that can do this. So if we have, or if in general, if we need to send out a phishing email for an adversary emulation, we first do the threat intel part. And the threat intel, the most important groups for threat intel to see what's the biggest threat is the insider threat, the crime group, the nation state, and the nation state. Um, I left out the insider threat in this research because if it's an insider threat, yes, of course it can still phish, but it doesn't have the characteristics of an APT, for example, when sending out those emails, unless they're working together. But that's that's a gray part. So I selected crime groups and nation states that use this phishing procedure. So when thinking, okay, what are the most efficient, well, the most important groups to use in this research to use during our next adversary emulation, I divided them in the size, how advanced they are, but also where they're from. So I selected TA505, APT28, APT40, and APT38. And for when I selected these groups, I went to search for search for emails, and I needed a lot of emails to do some analysis. So I did a part of automated analysis. So I needed EMLs and MSGs, and I got more than 200 of them. I got them by using the threat intelligence department, for example, but also did a lot of hunting on VirusTotal, for example. And next to that, I got a lot of screenshots from research done by other brilliant cybersecurity companies, and they put the screenshots of the phishing emails that were the way to get initial foothold to the network of some really big hacking exercises. And those screenshots were also, what was it, copied from the research to analyze them, not automated, unfortunately, but these were used to enrich my already existing data set. And next to those emails, the EMLs, the MSGs, and the screenshots, I also use the associated IOCs. IOCs like domains, malicious documents, etc. Because if you see an email, you can also sometimes the domain is blurred out, and you can use the domains in pages that are that contain IOCs like domains for it. And you can also use it for this research. So that's the way the adversary email data set is built. So okay, we have the email. we have the emails, we have the data set, we have the information, we have the classifying model for the emails. So now we can apply that classifying model on all these emails. So, like I said, I divided them in I chose 4 groups, and I used these 4 groups based on their location on the world map. Because sometimes someone wants to emulate an adversary coming from Russia, sometimes from China or another place. So I didn't want to choose only from one geographical location, but chose multiple instead. So the first one is Russia. So then we go to the first group coming from Russia. And the first group coming from Russia I chose is TA505. And I call them hashtag lazy mode. And I will tell you because I will tell you why I call this group lazy mode. So I call them lazy group because they're not really an influencer. So if you look at their emails, and there are a lot of emails from TF505, of course, it's not a real APT, it's a cybercrime group. So they send out a lot of emails to everyone to deploy ransomware, for example, and then ask for a lot of money. So they send a lot of emails. It's not really spear phishing, more like a spam campaign. So they're not really an influencer. They just send out a lot of emails and let's see who clicks. And everyone who clicks will give a lot of money to this group. And if not clicked, then we send out a lot of other emails. So they're not really an influencer. If I check out those email bodies or the subjects, a lot of text I see is this email is sent automatically. Well, that's it, with an attachment attached to it. Next one, please see attachment. That's it, with an attachment like a Word document or an Excel document. These emails are impersonal, so they can be sent to anyone. Well, you already saw it if you check out these 2 email bodies or subjects. These are impersonal, can be sent to everyone. They use the same scenario every time. And what I think is really funny, but also, well, not really surprising, is that the sender email address is not matching the sender name of the email. And they have HTML or MALDOC as an attachment, sometimes hosted on a website. So they use HTML attachments or MALDOCs. And I will show you a couple of examples of this email. These are 3 examples of this email. And what I said is that the sender email address is not matching the sender name. So you see 3 emails sent from RV Krishna Prasad, and you see 3 different email addresses. So what this group does is that they got email credentials from someone. They have a business email compromise, and then they send out phishing emails from that account to other people, but only change the sender name. So then it looks like it's sent from Krishna Prasad, but it doesn't match the sender email address. And this is an okay way to do it, because if you already compromised email addresses of email accounts, in that case, if you send it from that email account, then it will circumvent the spam filter, for example, because it's just a legit email. So what I said, these are examples of emails from TA505. What I also see is that they, for example, use emails sent with a theme like, I want to share a OneDrive document with you, please click this link. So I see links in the email, and I see attachment in the email, mostly MALDOCs attached to the email. So the next one. So we're still in Russia, but we shifted from TA505, which is a crime group, to a more sophisticated group called APT28. And what I see is that APT28 uses the principle of liking and authority. So what they use is, for example, authority, because they copy emails and email templates from organizations we know. so we already have a trust with, or they send it from the CEO, or someone in the organization with a really good position. Um, so they use it from external, so like Google, a known company, so they send out an email and make it look like it's sent from an external company, or they send it from an internal company. So for example, an email is sent by a CEO or someone in the upper management, and in that case, the email address is spoofed, so it looks like the email is sent from your colleague. So they copied corporate identity. So if it's from an external company, they just use, for example, the template that Google uses, or they use plain text in their emails. So it's just well, just like I said, just plain text. Normally, a lot of organizations also use plain text in their email body, so it's not really surprising that they're also using plain text. And what I saw when I checked out the domains is that they use a lot of typo squad domains with predictable patterns. Like they use the NATO, so that they use nato-int.com instead of nato.int, or that they use, for example, something with Office 365 in the name. So you see that they used words of commonly known organizations and that they put these names in their domain names. So they replace subdomains, for example, by a dash. So if you have a subdomain like mail.google.com, that they use mail-google.com, for example. And they use TLD in the domain and choose another TLD, just like I said with the NATO example. And this is a very common, a very known email. This was used to send to someone from the campaign team of Hillary Clinton. So this is a copy of the Google email that was sent if there was an alert on your Google account. Or they use something like this. So they used a current team or a current event that's actual, and they try to influence you or to get you into clicking on the document by using information that's relevant to you. But you see that it's mostly plain text or almost plain text. So then we go to the next one. So we had Russia, now we are going to China. They also have an APT, and I use APT 40. I don't know if they still send out emails because it was in the news last summer that some people were not really active anymore because they found possibly the people responsible for these hacking campaigns. But APT 40 uses the principle of liking and uses relevant themes for the recipient. So what I see is a local event in the neighborhood of the person who receives the email from APT 40, and maybe something that was in the news that's relevant for the recipient. So they look into who is the recipient, who is the possible victim, and creates a scenario that's relevant for them. So that's why they're using the principle of liking, because they use a scenario that's relevant and that might be a good one for the recipient. So what I said, they use the local news, activities, and events. So that's what I mostly saw in the emails. So they profile victims by using open sources. So if you have a LinkedIn page or something else, social media, you have articles on the internet, they use this information to profile the victim and make a relevant scenario for them. And the emails vary because I saw some emails that had a lot of typos, and sometimes I see an email that's well crafted. Mostly it's in English, and what I see is that sometimes the first initial email that is sent to the victim is well crafted, and if the victim responds to it or replies, then for example asking for help because they have to enable macros and they ask why they should enable macros, you see that if they respond to that there are a lot of typos. So this might indicate that there's someone involved in creating the first initial email and then they reply by themselves, and it's not really good English. That could be a possibility. And if you check what kind of bait is added to the email, you see that Moldocs are added in the attachment. They use more than only Word, for example, also Publisher, or they hosted their Moldocs on Google Drive and send a link to a Google Drive document. Also, what you see is that you can download a legit doc on an external website, and when you, well, actually you download a malware and with a payload, and if it's executed, you will be redirected to a legit document, so people won't get suspicious. So that's what we see for APT40 most of the time. And then the last one, and it's a really small dot on the map, but it's personally my favorite. If you can have a favorite APT, I don't know, for sending phishing emails, this would be my favorite, and it's in North Korea, and that's APT38, also called Lazarus. And these know how to fish and how to do stuff. They build full characters or impersonating real people. They're using email, they're using LinkedIn, Telegram, or Twitter to build their full scenario. So what you see is that they think, okay, what's relevant for the person? I already showed you the screenshot of Rob Wilson. That's a LinkedIn profile. That's made by Lazarus. So they made a LinkedIn profile, having a chat with the victim, build trust, gain trust from the person, and then they switch to Telegram to negotiate, for example, or to have a more chat about a possible job. They also use Twitter, like all the security or a couple of security researchers got a message from this group with Visual Studio project. So I got attacked by a North Korean APT, and all I got was this lousy Visual Studio project is in place. So they're using a lot of different media or platforms to send out this information. And most of the time, it's an important value for the recipient. So if you send an email or send a message to a security researcher, then a new project is really relevant. If you send out emails to someone who's looking for a job, that's also relevant. So they check out what's relevant for the recipient. And what's also used is that they spoof email addresses or create an unknown company. So they use the email addresses from people they know and send emails from that email addresses, or they just create a random unknown company. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if I get a message from a recruiter with a really random recruitment company name. I see a lot of random recruitment company names. So if someone sends me a job offer from that company name, well, I think you don't Google every recruitment company, and also not every legit recruitment company is listed on the internet. So they create an unknown company and create a couple of real LinkedIn pages for it and people for it. So they really build a character and a company for it. And what you see is that they use Dropbox or OneDrive for delivering malware to the victim. So they upload Dropbox the document on Dropbox, for example, or on OneDrive, and then share it with people. That's really smart because it won't end up in a spam filter, for example. So that's nice. And what I also see, if you look at the text, they adapt to the language of the person receiving the information. For example, South Korea, and they use the form of speech, but it's not always flawless. And that for an APT who's really good at phishing, they're still not flawless. So this is an example. I also showed the LinkedIn profile of Rob Wilson. So here you see an example that Rob Wilson sends a message, a LinkedIn a direct message to the victim, and asks, "Hi, I'd like to chat with you for a new job opportunity." So this is the way to gain trust in the first place. And when trust is gained, then they switch to Telegram. And what they did is that they asked the person to connect to a box to show if someone has the right skills for this job, and use this as a way to compromise a person. So would you see that they're really creative and not only using an email with an attachment, but they really put a lot of effort in the scenarios and send it to the people receiving the scenarios. So yes, this is one of my favorites because they really put so much effort in building scenarios that it's, well, that's awesome. Well, awesome. I don't think that's the right word, but this is an example of an APT using the principles of influence. They're really influencers, and they use almost every principle of influence to gain trust from the victim. And this is based on already or research already done by some companies. So during your next adversary emulation, I want to ask you to not just grab the default scenario from the shelf. Of course, as a pen testing company, red team company, you probably have a full list of phishing scenarios you can use every time and will be successful. For example, an Office 365 migration scenario. Um, of course, that's nice to use it and you know that it's successful. But next time, I would ask you to not grab the default scenario, but create something yourself. If you have to write a report and you say that you just use a default scenario, well, I don't know. Well, it's okay, but it's so much cooler to use real world examples of these phishing scenarios. So please be inspired by these characteristics and be more creative. It's super cool if you can phish someone during a red team or an adversary emulation that is really inspired by that APT that you're trying to emulate. And I think it really adds more value to your adversary emulation to also use these phishing scenarios next to the techniques you used in your attack chain, for example. Um, and influenced by content and context if simulating a serious APT. So be inspired by how they name the domain names, for example. Be inspired by how they craft their emails, if there's a good language, if there's a design in it, for example. And of course, I know that there's a difference in time and effort. If I was a real adversary, I would have time, money to attack someone. Maybe I'll take 2 years to attack someone with a lot of people. And of course, I know that during adversary emulation, you don't have that time, even if it's not low and slow. But you only have a couple of weeks or maybe a couple of months to do this adversary emulation. I know that's a difference, and then it's easy to fall back to the default scenario that you know that already works. But please, I would ask you to be more creative. And if you have something really nice, definitely share it with me. And now I said a lot of things during this presentation about phishing characteristics and how phishing mails were crafted, but I got a list of every characteristic used by APTs, so by the Russian state actor APT 28, the Chinese espionage group APT 40, North Korean state actor APT 38, and a Russian criminal group TA 505. So I made a list with every part of the email that I covered in this presentation, and I said which choices were made by APTs. So you can go to this page and you see those 4 groups with all the characteristics and with more examples of how they did it. So this was my presentation. I would really thank you for watching it. There's also a blog post added with more information. And if you have some questions or great ideas, I would love to hear them. And you can send me a DM on Twitter. Thank you very much.